Alright, so in Chapter 3, Section 3, we're dealing with finding means and standard deviations from a grouped data. So if we're given some type of frequency distribution, we should be able to find the approximate mean and standard deviation. So they give us all these great formulas to help find them, and we can use those formulas, but I also want to show you how to use technology to do them. So if here you're given a tape, the idea is that we don't know there were two people in between 8 and 899, but we don't know what their actual 5-year rate of return was. So if you had a guess somewhere between 8 and 899, where would you guess? And so right in the middle, 850. This one would be 950. So it would be finding the average of these two numbers. And what we're going to do with those is we would be taking each average and multiply it by its frequency. So how many times did it occur? And then we're going to sum all of those up, and then we divide by the sum of all the frequencies. So if we look at one of our problems from the text, on this one is finding the population mean and the population standard deviation from where you have some cigarette tax rates. So if we're given some data, right, they're in these bins here, and these are the frequencies. So again, what's halfway between 0 and 50 cents is 25 cents. So I would say 25 cents times 6, 75 cents times 15, $1.25 times 6. I would find all those products, then add them up, and then divide by this frequency, or the sum of all of these frequencies. If I want to do this in StatCrunch, StatCrunch puts them in with a lower limit and an upper limit. We'll see in a second. But I would really like to see them in bins. And since they told us what we start with, like we start with 0 and we go in increments of 0.5, we can create our own bins. So with our lower limit, right, we go from 0 to 0.5, from 0.5 to 1, from 1 to 1.5. And so that's roughly what we have over here. So now if I want to find the mean and standard deviation, just like I would in the previous two sections, I go to Summary Stats. But instead of column, let's go to Grouped or Bin Data. So my bins are in my bins, my counts are in my frequencies, and to find the mean, mean's already there, so I'm going to hit Compute. So in this one I get a mean of 1.625. So let's check that to verify that we're on the right path. And good job. And now it's asking for the population standard deviation. Notice it did ask for population standard deviation. In the previous section we talked about like this says standard deviation, but is that my population standard deviation? We had said that your unadjusted standard deviation stood for your population. And so using that bin that I created, I found an unadjusted standard deviation of 1.078. And then it wants us to do some comparisons. So that's a quicker way to shorten the math on finding the mean. Again, it's approximate mean of the population and an approximate standard deviation of the population. And again, if we look at these, they are a little off, but they're close. Or guessing in the middle was a good guess. Another type problem they have in the text is looking at weights, like as far as grades. Similar process, right? An A is a 4-point class. A B stands for 3 quality points. So what we're going to do in this is something similar. And I'm actually going to have an addendum that I make that will show me working some of this out by hand. Using the same premise, right, we're going to take the weight of an A and then multiply it by the number of contact hours. Like sometimes math classes are a 5-hour and English might be a 3-hour. So we need to multiply it by the grade, the quality points we receive from a grade. So when we do that, so what we see, we have a 4-hour class, so they got an A in it, a 3-hour class got a B in it, a 3-hour class got an A, a 5-hour class they got a C, and a 1-hour class they got an A. And we're going to divide by the total number of hours that they took. So this is how you calculate a GPA. In StatCrunch, there's a way that we can do this, but we also can do it by hand. So I'm going to show a way on this one of doing it by hand.